Rosh Hashanah takes us back into the nothing, into the very beginning. And it's a way of being from the very beginning. So that's where we'll start. But it's not just a holiday. I don't want us to think it that simple, okay? It's a call to action. It's a call to wake up our lives. It's a call to become alive again. It's a call to strengthen our connection with the Shem, to strengthen our connection with God. That's what it is. Okay? And carried this on. Okay, we're gonna, we go back to that 0.2% of the world population, the Jewish population, the state of Israel. It's about creating a transformational realization of the one. And what happened, let's talk about 3,400 years ago, is through Israel, the Torah came forth, obviously through God, Moses, and Israel, okay? The Torah came forth. Morals and ethics for our whole Western society came forth, the 10 speakings, also known as 10 commandments, and also the Shema. Now, we don't mention that much, but they're very collected. Listen, Shema Israel, listen Israel, and all are Israel. The Lord is one. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. The Lord is one, and we are one. We are all one. That's the key understanding, ultimately, of Rosh Hashanah, is to return to the oneness, to that consciousness, truly who we are. Now, the message that we're talking about was given 3,400 years ago. It's not a new message, but it seems to be new all the time because people don't get it. But that's why we have Rosh Hashanah, to wake us up to getting it, okay? And Israel had forgotten it somewhat too, and finally, after being removed from the land, it came back in 1948 in a process, in 50-year cycles before that, and reestablished and affirmed the prophecy that it would happen, and it did happen. We are living in direct prophetic times, and we are it. Think about that. We're it, okay? We're not somewhere else. We're the prophecy. We're the ones fulfilling the prophecy. That's worth thinking about, okay? That's a big responsibility too. I just want to say that. And what we stand is for the not only upliftment of Israel, but the upliftment of all creation. So we have Israel, we have the Torah and God, and they're as one in this process. And that will give you some insight into the forces of darkness that are working so hard against us. And of course, we're part of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who we want to honor for his faith in the Torah, his faith in God, and the way of life that he lived, and that really all of us are asked to live. It's about faith in this bigger picture that we're part of, okay? And those who were against Charlie Kirk, often those against Israel, often against people evolving spiritually, and confusing us with the logically sounding teachings that are against living the Torah way of life, the 10 speakings, which is really what it was called, not the 10 commandments. They were commandments, they were speakings, way that we have to make a choice, and that is what Rosh Hashanah is about. We are making the choice, okay? It's not a given. If it were given, could we evolve spiritually? It wouldn't work. Okay, so no amount of victimhood gets us there, or anger, or complaint, or, despair, or anti-God rhetoric. It doesn't get us there. It doesn't get us to what the purpose of life is, which is to know and merge with God. Okay? And the tradition of Rosh Hashanah, from this level of interpretation, okay, is the resilience to keep going and keep purifying ourselves. And as I mentioned before, we see where we've missed the mark, the tradition was saying it, we make the correction of what made us miss the mark, and then commit not to keep doing the same mistake. Okay, that's basically the process. And it's laid out explicitly in the Torah of how to do that. Rosh Hashanah is part of that because it's a part of a place where we, more formally do it. The idea is to do it every day. But at least once a year, we're going to do it. And that's the Rosh Hashanah, where we see where we missed the mark, make our commitment to not keep missing the mark. And then on Yom Kippur, it's written in the book. It's a final commitment. So in the tradition of Rosh Hashanah, it's not about polarity. It's not about fighting back. It's about fighting forward. Think about that for a second. Fighting forward. What does that mean? It means the will of God. To find purpose in our life, to find meaning in our life, to do and align ourselves with the will of God, with the Torah, with the biblical teachings, which help us align with the will of God. And when we play the shofar, which we're going to do in a minute, the shofar blast, it's really to awaken us to action. What's the action? Us. It's our transformation, and then that moves out for the transformation of the world, for the transformation of us personally, our family, our relationships, our community, and ultimately the world. And it's about joy. It's sugar and spice, okay? Joy. And it's about creating a fresh start. So it's about renewal of faith. Now, Charlie Cook really was part of his big message, way beyond free speech, was about the renewal of faith in God. And that's really what Rosh Hashanah is about. It's a really an invitation to reauthor our lives. That's a nice way of putting it, I think. And to seek purpose, to seek truth, and really uplift others back into God's will besides ourselves. So we often say, may your will be my will. That's really the essence of Rosh Hashanah in a deeper way. And we begin to tune into that divine will with meditation, with prayer, and ultimately moving into what I call the divine nothing, beyond the mind, where we simply lose our ego identification, which keeps us separate, and become one with the divine will. I call it, no, I don't call it. It's called the circumcision of the heart. What is that? We know about physical circumcision, we got that. But this is for men and women, okay? The circumcision of the heart is where we remove the barrier between us and God. Everybody is born with this barrier, just like little boys are born with a foreskin, okay? And that barrier, which people fight about with their whole life, when we remove that barrier through prayer, meditation, and doing what we call the mitzvah, the good deeds that are outlined, and return to God in that redemption, we're removing the foreskin of the heart. We're removing the barrier that separates us in consciousness from the divine. And it's very sweet. That's the sweetness of Rosh Hashanah. It is very sweet to be experiencing our will as God's will. Actually, it's a huge and very foundationally important thing in really all spiritual paths. And so that's what we're talking about. That's the sweetness. That's a real sweetness. Okay. Now we can have honey and we can this and that, but the real sweetness is the sweetness of becoming one with God's will. And that's like the highest calling of all. Now, I'm going to go back. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Okay. But that requires faith too, to do that. Like, why do that? Well, I do that because I think it's going to work. It's going to be closer to the truth of who I am and who all of us are. Now, in Bereshit, what we call Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay. And the earth was chaos and empty, and there was darkness over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God hovered over the water. And the water, in the deeper sense, in the Kabbalistic sense, is consciousness. Okay? So it's hovering, hasn't landed. That's important. We got to get that. We've got to land it. So our work, okay, is, and this is the work of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah initiates that work of the human journey that moves through starts with the chaos, okay, and brings us to the 7 days of creation that turns the chaos and darkness into heaven, into holiness, into sacredness, into the light of God, from darkness to light. That's the beauty. And we, in the very deep level, become the divine sound before the creation. It was down in the beginning. There was just the sound of God. The word preceded creation. And we connect to that word as that kind of divine sound, the divine nothing. Now, today we're going to use some sounds. And tekiah, you're going to hear me say that, you're going to hear Shanti say it, I'm going to play the shofar with it. It wakes us to pay spiritual attention. Now, wake up, tekiah, wake up. Now, shevarim, one of the other of the three words, is to mend what is broken. Shevarim. It's about mending what is broken. And that's what Rosh Hashanah is about. It's mending the parts of us that are broken. And Teruah is the joy and celebration that comes from the repair and resolution. It's the sweetness. Okay? That's where the real sweetness is. Okay? And So we penetrate the deeper truth of Rosh Hashanah, we look at self-honesty, you know, we look to see what we can correct and improve in ourselves. Um, we look for meaning and purpose and higher meaning and purpose, not just your role in life, but the higher meaning and purpose to merge with God. That's the higher meaning and purpose. And in that process, this is the circumcision of the heart. I'm coming back to, we move from ego consciousness, where most everybody's at, to God consciousness. From ego consciousness, and that's the circumcision, is when the covering of the heart that blocks us from being in God consciousness is removed. That's meaning, the deeper meaning of circumcision of the heart. And so Rosh Hashanah, in this deeper way of understanding it, is a ritual circumcision of the heart. That's a whole new way to think about it, okay? And it's a call, okay? And that's what the shofar call is about, is to circumcise the heart. Now, I'm going to bring Charlie Kirk into it, and you know, in the sense of his faith, okay? He was a model, he was an example of faith in the biblical truth. It isn't just faith in general, or your local idol. It's faith in God and the biblical truth that leads us to God. And that's my way of talking about it on the higher plane. And I'm just going to end with this thought. It's called Yahi Ratzon. What does that mean? Well, it means, may our will become as God's will. Translated is, may we become one with God in all our actions. May all our actions create holiness on the earth plane, okay? And may everybody be blessed with this transformative power of Yehi Ratzon, of Rosh Hashanah, in uplifting ourselves to the divine and uplifting our friends and family and ultimately the whole living planet Earth with the transformative power of Yehi Ratzon, the power of Rosh Hashanah. I'm going to hold for a second, let you reverberate with that, okay?